Throughout the early to mid-20th century, Australia was developing a set of ideals and beliefs about what it meant to be Australian. The Australian National Travel Association, ANTA, offered Percy Tromp the opportunity to design a series of posters using new modernist techniques to capture attention and showcase Australia internationally. Tromp's posters contained images of Australia that we would now define as stereotypes: native wildlife and flowers, open beaches, and white Australian culture. It was all done in efforts to drive the Australian tourism sector, which is still happening today in campaigns such as Dundon and the later Philosophy. My film will showcase Tromp's works through the 30s to 40s and explore a white, carefree Australia in comparison to today's multicultural, all-inclusive society. Percy Tromp was born on the 30th of May 1902 in the small country town of Beaufort, Victoria, and was child number 9 in his family. The Tromp family ended up moving to Ballarat, where there was more opportunity, leading to Percy being educated at the Sebastopol Primary School. It was here where he developed a love for singing in the school choir and playing cricket, which later is shown in one of his poster designs. He was one of the earliest members to attend the Ballarat School of Mines and received his certificate in 1917. Also noteworthy was his completion of the 1916 Industrial Design course at the Ballarat Technical Art School. In 1921, Percy served as the editor of the school's magazine, graduating in 1922 to the position of secretary. It was the next year, 1923, that Percy moved to Melbourne to join the commercial art firm of Giles and Richards, where he was delegated the task of designing hundreds of confectionery boxes and wrappers. It was not long after that Tromp started his own studio in Little Collins Street, creating thousands of poster designs and providing a space for emerging artists to hone their skills. It was during the 1930s that Tromp gained the most recognition for his posters, meeting clients such as Charles Holmes, who was chairman of Victorian Railways under Harold Clapp, Transport Minister at the time. This early relationship with Vic Railways really set Tromp up with a connection to the Australian National Travel Association, ANTA, as they saw some of the early works Tromp was producing for Clapp. ANTA, now Tourism Australia, commenced in 1929 and was established after the Great Depression in an attempt to boost tourism and spending within Australia. The Prime Minister of the time, Stanley Bruce, allocated £100,000 to promoting Australian tourism overseas. The inclusion of this budget allowed for designers such as Percy to help create an image of Australia that would promote people wanting to visit. Tromp portrayed sun-worshipping bodies, bushwalking, and white Australians, which we think of as stereotypes today. During the 1930s, Tromp's posters had broken from the national market and were starting to be recognised internationally, gaining widespread appraisal, which even led to him landing commission jobs for the Canadian Pacific Railway. One of Tromp's most famous poster designs was the creative Bondi Beach design, which has become an icon and collectible depiction of Australia during the 1930s. This poster pictures a woman standing elegantly dressed in decorative beach attire, showing skin too, which for the time would have challenged poster norms. This type of depiction of Australian life, with a busy Bondi Beach and a car park full of colourful cars, showed white beach culture off to the rest of the world and portrayed Australian beaches as democratic, sun-soaking sanctuaries. The poster's foreground features a flat colour palette, contrasting modernist principles with the more Art Deco style featured in the pattern choices, in an attempt to encourage international visitors through familiarity. Another one of Tromp's famous poster designs is his Trans-Australian Railway poster in 1935, which pictured a speeding steam train at night, powering through rural Australia. The train makes up the mid to background section of the poster, and as our eyes follow down the carriage, we see big streamlined, yet luxurious looking carriages. If we contrast with the foreground, we see an Indigenous person standing under a tree holding a stick, clothed in a thin white loincloth, looking up at the train as if he doesn't know what it is. The final part of the poster is a little window showing the luxurious interior of the train carriages, paired with the text reading, "Luxurious travel, night and day." In the 30s, a promotional poster like this would have been perceived as somewhat of an exotic, wild adventure and would have encouraged a discourse of what the foreign land of Australia is like. The poster uses a very simple, flat colour palette in classic Tromp style. In a speech he gave to the Ballarat School of Mines, he talks about this colour use. Lighting is the all-important factor. It will make the poster concerns stand out on the hoardings. even if the details are left out and nothing but 2 tones to each colour are included. This principle Tromp is talking about was heavily used by designers and photographers of the time, such as Max de Payne, who was also capturing the new Australian way of living through photography. During the 1930s, modernism was emerging throughout society in a number of different ways due to people wanting and needing better standards of living. This idea of good design and design for all was growing in popularity, as it put the focus on what aspects of life are the most essential and concentrated on stripping back the clutter. This stripped back clarity can be seen in Tromp's For a Different Holiday, Great Barrier Reef, and his Test Match poster designs. Both of these designs feature a simplistic colour palette, making use of the negative space to draw attention to the shapes and ideas that the posters are communicating to us. We see this negative space much more in the cricket poster, which communicates British ideals and familiarity yet again. The Great Barrier Reef poster is all about sun-loving, free-spirited, white Australians, where the people in the background are searching through water for shells, and in the foreground we see a blonde-haired woman holding a hat much similar to that of an explorer. During this interwar period, ANTA was created to help develop Australia's tourism market and economy, as there was no real image associated with the destination. ANTA was targeting the British and American tourist markets, trying to familiarise the countries with things they knew best, so they were less discouraged by the idea of travelling to such a foreign continent. In 1929, Australia's economy had just been hit by the Great Depression, a period of time where the global economy and market collapsed. Australia's unemployment rates hit 30% as a result of export industries such as wheat, wool and cattle collapsing under market pressures, leaving the government to pursue alternatives. International tourism had not been explored yet. With advancements in transport technology and the construction of new railways, freeways and airports, Australia's destination identity was waiting to be developed. Almost 100 years on, and not a lot has changed with Australia's international identity. Tourism Australia is still running campaigns designed off the establishment of Australia's destination image that was created by designers like Tromp in the 30s. We still boast sun-soaking lifestyles and a destination that is like no other, prehistoric and exotic in nature, where the tourist is made to feel as though they are on a Jurassic Park-styled adventure. However, Tourism Australia is making a conscious effort to try break these stereotypes. We see this with the depictions of Indigenous people and diversity within Australia. In the Undiscover Australia campaign, Tourism Australia briefly talks about how they experienced a decrease in travellers because of the damaging stereotypes that have been reinforced through marketing over the past 90 years. Unfortunately though, Tourism Australia will struggle to shake the image portrayed by the modernists during the 1930s if they still continue to run campaigns like Dundee, where the sole focus is the outback, beaches and blonde-haired, thick Aussie accent actors. In the Philosophy campaign, we can clearly see that Tourism Australia is aiming to shift the perspective on Australia's identity from the landscapes and stereotypes to the people who live there. Tourism Australia portrays Australians as being the most important part of the land and that they live a lifestyle that's healthy, happy and easygoing, making the destination more desirable. These ideas, however, still strongly connect back to the modernist lifestyles designers like Tromp were marketing in the 30s. Tourism Australia is definitely conscious of the stereotypes that were created, so it's nice to see them trying to approach campaigns on a different angle. Although personally, I think our prior international identity is something that is ingrained in the nation, too much to simply shake off.